I just want to thank everyone today for taking the time, and it's a real privilege to be speaking here, and thank Kinvestor and the whole group at Kin. I want to get right to the heart of things quickly, so please note the safe harbor on that slide. And my slides today will be posted at the Kin site, so you can take a look at your leisure and our truly talented management team, as well as our board, which we've built out over the past year with skill sets that are essential to the progress we're making as we work through our feasibility study and on our way to production. There's also a snapshot of our cap table. And of course, I'm happy to provide more quantitative detail upon request. Now you get a sense of our who, our what, and our how. Don't get me wrong, having the right team with the right experience and the right plan is essential. Nothing successful happens without all of that. But my goal this morning is to really give you a sense of the why. Why I'm convinced that Graphite One is truly integral to the transformation taking place in the world around us, and the green future that's the focus of this Kin Investor Gathering. And for that, I have a few slides for today, so there'll be some time at the end for questions. The why really starts with the renewable revolution, the electrification of everything. Graphite really is everywhere. In the phones you're holding, hopefully not scrolling on right now, in the laptops that is your window into this conference today, and in all the devices that connect us to each other and to the world around us. And the fact that we take graphite for granted, that we don't really make the connection between the materials that make this possible and the magic of the devices we use. Because that's okay. It's our market opportunity. This is the part that makes Graphite One such a unique business and allows investors such as yourselves to arbitrage the knowledge of dislocations and how this new world of ours works. There's a graphite crisis, and the numbers couldn't be more simple. 100%. That's how much graphite the US has to import today. Another way of saying production right now is at zero. 70%. That's how much of the world's supply is coming out of China. How is the US going to compete in these new technologies shaping our world? Are we going to be a maker or a taker? An owner or a customer? Owning what we need here or buying it from other countries? Read any headline, watch an hour of news, current events are teaching us how dangerous this is. And depending on foreign sources of supply, in a world where adversaries can use materials access as an economic weapon, it's really not tenable. When you have a deposit such as Graphite One's, it's more than untenable, it's negligent. I want to talk about American competitiveness, about American manufacturing, about equipping the American military with the most advanced weapon systems in the world. How is that going to work with zero graphite production? Back to the numbers, 95%. And that is how much graphite is in the typical battery anode. You can't make one without graphite, and a lot of it. 494% is where the World Bank's projection is for what the world will need in graphite by 2050. When President Biden did his 100-day report, they came back at 2,500% by 2040. And 15 to 1 is how much graphite there is in the typical lithium-ion battery compared to lithium. The US government knows it. You see it in the bills being passed for American infrastructure, support from the executive branch, Congress, and departments like Department of Energy, the Department of Defense. They're leading to a lot of funding for critical minerals, such as graphite. And of course, the triggering of the Defense Production Act to recognize graphite and the battery materials is essential to the national defense. You can't take on a crisis without a strategy. For G1, the strategy is to build a complete 100% US-based supply chain for advanced graphite, from mining to refining to recycling. And it starts with our Graphite Creek deposit. The United States Geological Center recognized it last year as the largest in the United States. And just last month, the USGS came back and said Graphite Creek is one of the largest deposits in the world. Because securing access to 21st century tech materials is not just about supply, it's about the supply chain. We've learned that the hard way. And as a country and as a society these past 2 years, with the dislocations to so many supply chains due to COVID and the economic shutdowns, and still with us today, sometimes it seems like whatever thing it is you need and find, it's not there. People just shrug their shoulders and say, well, I guess it's the supply chain. I'm actually half expecting to hear from my kids one day that forget about the dog ate my homework. That's kind of so 20th century. Just blame it on the supply chain. But I have to say, on balance, this focus on supply chains is a teachable moment for all of us, and a reminder in this global economy of ours that we need to know about the stuff our stuff is made from and where it's made, and what happens to us if we don't have it. I can tell you it's a hard lesson in the resource world. It's not enough to discover and develop a deposit and pull critical minerals out of the ground. You've got to transform those raw materials into the advanced materials America needs to complete and maintain a modern 21st century tech economy. And you have to do it right here in the United States. One missing link in the chain, one instance where we have to import from a country who is a current competitor and a potential adversary, and supply risk and national security vulnerabilities come right back at us. And that's why G1 has evolved a fully supply chain solution. From Graphite Creek to our planned advanced anode material plant in Washington State, where hydropower, green energy to make a green tech material will give us the economics we need to make this work. And to complete the circular economy, the recycling component we're adding to reclaim and reuse graphite material from spent batteries, which will become a very important feedstock as we move past 2030. Final wrap up as I look to this and figure out that the critical minerals list and the Defense Production Act, I have some thoughts on this. And I'm glad graphite is on the list, and that graphite is a defense critical, no question. But we've got to move beyond government lists of critical minerals we lack and get a clear signal from the US government that projects like ours and many others involving critical minerals matter. As you know, we've had great support from Governor Dunleavy, from Senator Murkowski, who has elevated Graphite One and critical minerals issues in the Senate, from Senator Sullivan, and Alaska's new Congresswoman Peltola. They all understand the importance of resource development. With Alaska's engagement at both the state and federal levels, we've got to collaborate and get creative. Between the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which allocated $7 billion to advance domestic projects in renewable energy, supply chains, and critical minerals, with a specific focus on EV batteries, and President Biden declaring battery materials, including graphite, as Defense Production Act Title III materials, the US government is getting in the game and beginning to put the right policies in place. At G1, I can tell you that my team and I are working constantly with the key leaders in Congress, at the Department of Defense, at the Department of Energy, and at the White House to make Graphite One the poster child for resource development, done responsibly and done right. EV makers will need a lot of graphite, and G1's got it. Energy storage needs a lot of graphite, and G1's got it. And the Department of Defense will need a lot of graphite, and G1's got it. And you look a little further ahead, industries we haven't even invented yet will need graphene, and we'll have that too. So please watch this space, and even more so, unique projects like Graphite One. Thanks for your time today and for this chance to share our story. I look forward to more discussion and welcoming you as investors in G1 as we move forward together.
Well, thank you, Anthony. Thanks very much. That was a really interesting presentation. I certainly have some questions, and there's a couple that have come in from the audience as well. So let's get started on that. I'm going to start with, certainly a distinctive factor of this concept for me is that it is a beginning to end, right? That you're planning an anode facility, which is not, as someone who invests in mining all the time, I don't usually see the downstream end of things as part of the decision. So let's start with that decision. Is there any downside to, like, are you turning all of the graphite that comes out of Graphite Creek are you sending it all to the anode facility? Is there any downside, or are there any missed opportunities that you're leaving on the table by turning it into anode yourself? Let's expand on that decision a little bit.
That was a good question. So Gwen, when you look at a typical graphite project, not all of the graphite will be made into anode material. We're still looking at the percentage of our graphite that would made into a graphite anode. Right now, we're looking at probably anywhere from the 70 to 75% range be made into the anode. And again, there's other opportunities that you're going to see us come out with here over the next 6 months that we're working very closely with the groups that I just mentioned, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, on other areas that they rely 100% on other countries for. And in that regard, the focus from day one is for Graphite One to make better and cleaner energy. And you and I have spoken many times. My background is in development in the tech sector. So I was really drawn to graphite as one of the most advanced materials required for technology. And the energy revolution shaping the 21st century. And again, the reason why I started this company is because of Elon Musk. And I give him all the credit for what he's done, and started following him back in 2002. And so we look at, Graphite One really is not a graphite mining company. We're a tech company that mines graphite. And so I don't just say that lightly. Our focus really is on the technology. We've known that graphite was there. And the reason why we knew that is because the USGS had written about it 75 years ago. And we know that our graphite was used in the war, and was shipped down on barges to Washington State and used to make steel. And so from that aspect, we were just focused on making sure that this graphite could actually be made into anodes. And we've done that. And when we know that our graphite can be made into anodes, and we're very excited over the next couple of quarters here to be releasing some news as to who those end users are going to be that will be using our anodes.
Gotcha. Okay. Then let's move into talking more about anodes. The anode market, batteries, the anode market, these are complicated spaces for those of us who don't live and breathe batteries. Yeah. So can you talk about the anode market? Where is it now? Where is it going? Teach us about the anode market.
Sure. Well, the anode market is made up of really both natural graphite and synthetic graphite. And they expect the anode market to grow from about the 1.5 million tons a year right now. And by 2030, they expect it to be anywhere from 4 to 6 million tons a year. And by 2040, to be double that. And in the meantime, we believe that right now it's about 40-60 for natural, but we believe that it will be more like 50-50, both having 50% natural, 50% synthetic, which is why Graphite One will also be producing synthetic graphite.
You're confident in that market. Eggs basket done. Not quite. You say there is other things going on, but for sure it's a huge and growing market.
It is.
It's thinking of battery demand increases. I often quote this with lithium, but it's the same really with graphite, where you go back 20 years and we didn't use lithium for anything, and now we need it for like every electric vehicle that exists. And graphite is similar. It's not that we didn't use it for anything, but its uses were not dramatic. And now, the scale of growth of demand of graphite over the last few years and going forward is pretty hard to wrap your head around, really. Okay. There's obviously a huge amount of politics. And the fact that we're remaining on this slide highlights that. These are, the conversations that you are having to have as the CEO of a company, usually or would often be more constrained to investors, those who are impacted by the project, potential financiers. But instead, your list includes a huge number of political parties, people, considerations. What tangible benefits have you as Graphite One seen from all of this politicking? And do you expect more tangible sort of specific benefits for you going forward here?
Well, it's kind of like what I kind of mentioned when I just gave my little talk there, which is before COVID, no one really talked about supply chains. I say that, but at the same time, I had actually been to the White House before COVID started. These are discussions that we've been having for, I started the company 12 years ago, and I've been to DC many, many times over the last 12 years. So they've been aware of the challenges of supply chains, but COVID really brought that to the surface. So it's the same as everything in life, Gwen. When you don't really need it, and when things are just working, you don't really focus on them. And when things grind to a halt and they're glaring in your face, you think to yourself, hey, how have we allowed the United States to rely on the last 32 years on another country to support our military, for instance, the Department of Defense, which is, I dare say, probably the largest purchaser of graphite in the United States today. And you think of all the drones, you think of all the lithium-ion batteries that are used in the military, submarines, everything that uses graphite, and the US produces zero. And so this is not something they didn't know about. This is something that has really come to light through COVID. I always say to people, as awful as COVID has been, it's been refreshing, because I feel like I've been speaking, to a wall. And I will give my credit to Senator Lisa Murkowski, who is a massive advocate for critical minerals, and a dear friend, and she's someone that I really truly respect, because she has been doing this longer than I have, and been pushing a rock uphill, I would think, if you asked her. But I feel like that time is changing, and people are starting to open up to understand, hey, everything that we're using, like I said, from our phones to our laptops, our iPads, our electric vehicles, are using these materials that a lot of them are not coming from the United States. And yet we have, like I said, I'll dare say, probably in the top 3 largest graphite deposits in the world.
Yeah.
And that's not to be taken lightly. And you look at really where we're going and the electrification of everything. It sounds like a cute little thing to say, but it's the truth. And you realize at the end of the day, it isn't tenable to rely on everyone else. And at the end of the day, it's not just going to be up to Graphite One. We're going to need multiple Graphite Ones to get to where we want to get to by 2030 to 2035.
Absolutely. So then, that all makes a ton of sense. And it brings to me 2 questions. One is going to be about investor interest in Graphite One, which I'll get to in a moment, and sort of who that is and whether it's changed as all of these things that you just described have come more to the fore. The other one, though, is sort of what the specifics of it. It's one thing for Senator Murkowski and for these efforts to be made and these things to slowly grind their way through the political system that is. And it's another thing for Graphite One to have an expedited permitting process or get money, or, you know what I mean? Like to get a specific benefit that investors see is that they're getting from any of that. So what about that?
Well, I don't know if I can really speak to that, because a lot of it is being done at a very high level. Okay. We look forward to talking more about that over the next couple of months.
That's a specific time frame.
Yeah, well, we like I said, this has been going on for many years, and so this is not new to anyone. It happened under President Trump. He did put the graphite in critical minerals. Then President Biden picked it up and they ran with it. And they've come a long way over the last 2 years. And we believe that under the Department of Defense Title III Act that was enacted middle of last year, I think there's going to be some real opportunities there for the United States to be able to build their supply chain from within.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Would you say it's fair that uranium is perhaps an example of how these things can progress? I mean, there was talk for years about uranium being a strategic mineral, and
Yes.
there wasn't sufficient US supply, and nothing seemed to happen from an outsider's perspective for a very long time. And now it is happening, in that the government is making a strategic stockpile of uranium. And so do you think that's a reasonable example of how this might happen?
Absolutely. I mean, I will tell you, I'm a big believer in uranium. For us to accomplish our goals at Graphite One, we need energy, and there's a lot of it. And so, that being said, uranium to me is something that the US needs to get behind in a big way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch back to that other question that I referenced, which is the investor. Who are the investors who are interested in Graphite One? I mean, it's a bit of a strange question, but it also isn't. Like I've said, I'm a mining person, so I know that there's a crowd of people who like mining stories and who like the concept of demand for a commodity and whether there's supply for that. But you, like you say, are sort of a tech company that is mining. So how does that work for you? Who are you marketing to? Where are you finding interest? How have you found that interest change over the last few years?
Right. Well, I can't kiss and tell too much, Gwen, but I will tell you this, that that there's a lot of companies out there that have really, I would say, just in the last 4 or 5 months, come forth and said, hey, listen, we really are getting our heads around what you guys are doing. Can't believe you started it 12 years ago. This is something that needs to happen. And I would say there's everyone from end users to the middle OEMs, and even to more local, very powerful groups that typically have invested more in the real estate side and the technology side, that are understanding manufacturing and seeing really that a supply chain needs to happen. And then there's the recycling side that we haven't focused too much on. We're really focused on obviously Graphite Creek, bringing that into production over the next 5 years, as well as the Anode facility in Washington State. And I just want to touch on that really briefly before we end here. Is our business plan is to build an anode manufacturing facility in Washington State over the next 3 years, and we're going to start with synthetic graphite. And because what we'll do is we'll start producing synthetic graphite. Our goal is to produce 25,000 tons. That's roughly about a $200 million revenue. And in the meantime, we will be focused on then bringing in Graphite Creek into production a couple of years after that gets into production. So that's something that's very exciting for us. We'll be talking more about that as we move forward here. We're in negotiations on several locations in Washington State. We made it public that we're focused on Washington State, and we really look forward to building that business plan and moving it all forward.
I mean, that's cool from someone, like I say, who watches mining projects. It's very cool to hear about a project that can get going in the time between wanting to build a mine and actually being able to build a mine. That's just a slow process, no matter who you are and whether you've been doing it for 12 years or not. It takes a long time to get from where you are to actually producing graphite from the ground. So that's cool that you're planning that in the interim. Okay, I guess my last question is then, what would you say is your critical path right now? And then run into maybe a wrap up comment. But what is your critical path, or what's the critical path here for getting your vision enacted for Graphite One? And then maybe remind us as we wrap up this presentation about the overall Graphite One concept.
Sure. Well, it really is what I just mentioned. We are focused on getting Graphite Creek into production here. We're working through our feasibility right now. We expect that to be completed over the next 15 months. And in the meantime, we are focused as well on an anode facility to build that out in Washington State. We're going to start with 25,000 tons of synthetic graphite. And then we will also be building a natural graphite anode facility as well in Washington State. And in the meantime, we are focused on making sure that we're aligning ourselves to be the greenest mining project to ever get put into production in the United States. And we've always said that. We've always focused on that. We do things the right way, not the quick way. And we kind of keep our heads down and stay focused. And we're very excited for the dealings that we're focused on, right from the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, even talking with the White House, and everyone is really looking at Graphite One and figuring out how we become the poster child to how to do this the right way.
Gotcha. This is an unimportant question, but it's just a curiosity. You say you started following Elon Musk back in 2002. Have you ever chatted with him?
I will tell you, not verbally, but by email.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's interested in graphite. I didn't intend that to be leading about Graphite One, but he's I was just more curious.
Yeah. He's I think he talks to a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be my answer. And he's and I followed him when he was at PayPal. So I was in a technology company where he's in PayPal, and then when he left, he went to Tesla. I think it was around, don't quote me on this, 2002 or 2003, something like that.
Cool.
And
Fun times. All right. Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for taking the time to have Graphite One participate in our conference today. Big picture thoughts there, and a different kind of approach to mining and participating in this green transition. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gwen. Always a pleasure.
Likewise.
Have a great day. Take care.
You too.
Bye.